to Long Beach, and I got my able-bodied seaman. And then, as an able-bodied seaman, as soon as I graduated, I shipped out on one of the Liberty ship.
So you did that through the course of the war and beyond, correct?
Yes.
Want to go ahead and tell us a little bit?
Tell us about
Yeah, tell us about that experience.
Well, during the wartime, I went to various areas. If you want to know the most exciting trip that I had was when I went up to Egypt. We carried a load of General Sherman tanks, which was the largest one. They were going to invade Sicily. They were planning on invading Sicily. And I have pictures there of me on a camel. The three of us, we went to the pyramids. And now, the most exciting thing that happened was we were coming back, and we were in the Mozambique Channel, which is between Mozambique and, well, it's on the southwest coast of Africa. I'll put it that way. And during wartime, you were not allowed to break radio silence unless you were being torpedoed or something like that. Well, we were in the Mozambique Channel, and a vessel had broken radio silence because it was being torpedoed, and so we were on a 24-hour alert then, and sure enough, we got in the Mozambique Channel, and we were looking. Our vessel was facing the sun, but at the same time, the German submarines at that point would always come to the surface because they were running out of torpedoes. So they rose, and we barely saw the the tower or the periscope rather, and so we turned 180 degrees and put our stern, and then we got off one shot. By that time it had gone down, so that was the closest that I got to being torpedoes, and we could see the torpedo go along about. So that was probably the scariest. But fortunately I was never torpedoed. I've had experience of loading dynamite on board the ship when it caught fire at Hercules in San Francisco Bay. Mm-hmm. So that was some of the things.
How old were you when you started with into training for the Maritime Services?
I was 19.
19. And you stayed in the Maritime Service after the war ended. Can you tell us a little bit more?
I stayed, yes, after the war, I stayed in because of the Marshall Plan. And that, I stayed in the Merchant Marine with the Marshall Plan for about maybe, let me see, about 4 or 5 years.
So how old were you when you got out of the Maritime Service?
I think, let me see, about 29 or 30, somewhere in there.
Okay, so you had quite a long career with them.
Yeah.
What was your rank?
Pardon?
What was your rank?
Well, when I was finally chief mate, And that was the highest rank that I achieved. I had the seat time to become a master, but I didn't want to continue on.
So when you got out, what did you choose to do next?
After I got out, I went to work with Lawrence Construction, and I had the ability, the mathematical ability, being a navigator. And they were a firm in Sacramento, and then I had started a construction career then. And the high point of my construction career was the restoration of the state capitol.
Yes, and who did you work for then?
I worked for Lawrence and Lawrence Continental.
Continental Hill.
Continental Hiller?
Continental Hill, yeah.
So, what was your role in the restoration of the Capitol?
Well, I wrote every contract that was there for that project, and it was it was a project that well, I got pictures of it up there. You might flash it up there. But anyway, all the contracts for that project and the meetings with the state and so forth, because they were the owners of the building.
Well, some people that hear this interview may not be aware just how extensive that project was. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Capitol restoration?
Yeah, the project, the value of the project in dollars of at that time was $60 million, and then let's see, it's hard to describe, but that it was built like the Romans built. It was all brick, you see, with a. This gives you an idea.
Some brick arches and brick walls.
Yeah, the wall. You see, that building was built in 1860s, time of Civil War, and everything. A lot of the things had to come around the Horn, on sailing ships. And can you see this all right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so. So anyway, that was a high point, I'll call it, of my construction career.
Let's go into it a little bit more. So the purpose of the restoration was to take this building that was built in the 1860s,
yes,
and bring it up to current engineering standards, correct?
The seismic, to bring it up a seismic quarter. And we built that building. We started with one wing, and we had to support it first. We started with one wing, and then we went to the other wing, you see, which was almost a duplication. We had to build for the Assembly and Senate temporary quarters at that time. And so then the most difficult part was the center, the Capitol, because that's
The rotunda?
the rotunda, and that was see, it was a double ceiling, and inside the structure was wood and steel supports. So from the construction standpoint, that was a high point of my career.
You also had to do a lot of work to make sure it kept its historic integrity and look, right?
Yes, we had a historical architect that we had to deal with, and then we had some special artisans. I remember there was one Austrian who came up and removed all of the small tiles, and then he took them down to L.A. and removed the ones that had worn all the way through, and they put it on. So there was a lot of special, and there was there was a fellow from West Sacramento, and he got on his back like Michelangelo with a big, like a big pastry bag, and shot it, and then we followed that. We followed that. So there was a lot of
He was
improvisation.
doing plaster, right?
Yeah,
With the bag.
yeah.
And Dad was the chief estimator for the bid, and then the administrator
In
through the
addition to
entire
contract,
renovation.
in addition to the contracts, you did all the estimating?
I did the estimating along with the owner of the firm,
Okay.
Mike Keller, who
So,
was a very shrewd, very intelligent structural engineer and owned the firm. So he and I, because it was very difficult to come up with backgrounds because the building was so old, you see. Yeah.
well, it's looked upon as one of the really important restorations of our time. So, I mean, you were involved in a very
Yeah.
important work.
Well, it was, and it was very expensive. I mean, $60 million in those at that time.
I don't think we've established the date. We're talking around the 1980 as a trip. I
It
mean, there's only
was-
been two,
It was 1976 to 1982.
right? There's only
Yeah.
been two restorations.
Thank you. So, Frank, did you have mentors who you learned from and helped you learn these trades?
Well, I would say that in the construction part of it,
Let's do that, yeah.
yeah, well, in the construction part of it, see, I was the only one in our firm who didn't have a college degree in engineering. But I had, so I can't say that I had a mentor. The closest thing to that would be Mike Keller, the owner of the firm, in the construction portion.
Were there other mentors at different stages in your life? We're going to do the nonprofit stuff later, but during either your maritime time or your other jobs that you did, did you have any mentors that you would like to mention? Important?
Not really. It was kind of just a learning process of my own. See, I really didn't have, because I was fairly young at the time, and it wasn't like all of a sudden you had this person as your mentor. But the closest to it in construction would be Mike Keller. But in other things, like where I was involved in efforts like the Save the American River Association. That came because I used to run up and down the levee, see.
We're going to get into more detail on that in a little bit,
sure.
so let's save that. So during your working life, what would you, I think you talked to your most memorable moment, would that have been the Capitol restoration?
During my working life,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that during my working life, the restoration of the state capitol would be the most important, the most significant.
Some of these questions are probably going to overlap when we come to the nonprofit, but what became the biggest passion in your life?
The biggest what?
Passion.
Passion in my life?
Mm-hmm.
Well, to save, I felt, Lisa, give me that thing that I had there. I keep this because I want to continue doing it. Okay. This will sum it up. I said, one of the most important contributions that a person or a group of persons can make to a community is the acquisition, preservation, and enhancement of land to be used for public parks and open space. So that kind of covers what my passion was insofar as as what we're concerned with now.
All right, so that's good, very good. So what was your biggest disappointment?
Well, my biggest disappointment, and there were quite a few, was we couldn't get enough money. Sometimes people would stay with you for a while and then they'd back off and you'd have to get other people.
Money for what, Frank?
Well, when you say, well, we're going to try and obtain this piece of land
For the parkway?
for the parkway, people would say, oh, that's very nice, but then they would drop off and you'd get others to come along. And I do want to say that also young people would come aboard, and they would help out.
What contributions are you most proud of?
Pardon?
What contributions are you most proud of?
I would say that being made President Emeritus of Save the American River Association, to be the President Emeritus, I served 10 years as President, and that's what...
And then additional years as President Emeritus, right?
Well, yes, I didn't stop then. I just continued on in the Board of Directors and continued to be involved.
What do you feel is the biggest challenge to the field of Parks and Recreation today?
In my view, the biggest challenge is obtaining sufficient funds, obtaining people that'll stick with the project, because this is a project that's it's ongoing. It's ongoing all the time. So I'd say that.
What's the biggest risk you ever took?
Well, in the field of Parks and Rec,
Well, this is a general question. You can answer it however you'd like.
the biggest risk was biting off more than I could chew. That was the biggest risk, because sometimes you say, oh yeah, I'm going to do that, but then you just can't do it because you don't have the money or you don't have the backup or people drop out.
The next question, what was the result of that? I think you may have already answered that. What volunteer organizations have you done volunteer for work or managed?
Well, the volunteers.
Let's start with Sarah. Tell me about what your role with Sarah was over the years.
When I was with Sarah,
To state the full name of the organization.
Save the American River Association. I served for 10 years as the president. So that's why then they decided, well, you served for 10 years and nobody else has, so they made me president emeritus. Now, being with Save the American River Association, we were always trying to acquire more land. That, and also there were private inholdings that were difficult to get. We didn't have the money.
We're talking about the American River Parkway, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
And so the challenge was to get enough money to buy land. The challenge was to keep groups, like for instance, bicycle groups. They wanted off-road bicycling. Dog owners wanted to be able to run dogs free, and we were concerned about that, to the wildlife and so forth.
Well, early on, the parkway was just getting established, and there
Yes.
were a lot of parcels to buy, and there were issues over river flows. Can you tell us a little bit more about your involvement in those
Well,
things?
yes, there was, the fellow who, for instance, we had Jim Mullaney, who people don't know. Well, he was trying to acquire land along with me, and I remember him coming to my home, and he says, Frank, if we just acquire this, then we'll have to acquire more land. And it was very, very difficult, and it's kind of hard to explain, but a lot of this was continually ongoing, continually.
And who did was Mr. Mullaney an employee or another volunteer?
No, he was another volunteer that very few people don't know about. And then there were professionals, park people that, and I'm trying to name one.
Bill Pond?
Pardon?
Bill Pond?
Bill Pond.
Elmer Aldrich?
Bill,
No, Bill Pond was the director of county parks.
yes, he was the first director, I believe, of county parks. And he was a professional at it when there weren't many professionals at that time. And so Bill Pond was, but he was a professional. He was not a volunteer.
Correct. So your role in these acquisitions, was it to garner public support?
You had to during the 10 years that I was president of Sarah, I had to be concerned with other uses and keep getting persons continually involved, getting money, and so forth and so on. So that's what my...
And why did you need money?
Oh, we always needed money. We needed money to buy new parcels of land.
Mm-hmm.
We needed new money to... there were certain... we needed money for legal. We were constantly suing people.
Why?
Well, because they wanted to do something, whatever it might be, that was contrary to, for instance, they wanted to run dogs. They wanted to have off-road bicycles. They wanted to have off-road vehicles of some kind. So it was that.
There was a considerable issues related to taking water out of the American River in the Folsom South Canal, and you were in the middle of that, correct?
There was that too, and we had some professionals that we had to fight also within the system, and
Like Cal Expo?
Well, let me finish the water issue.
yeah, well, there was a period. I won't say a period. If there was an incident of Cal Expo wanted to. They wanted to put in the golf course, and then there was another fellow who was an employee of Cal Expo, and we called him the drugstore cowboy, because he wanted to have polo fields within the parkway. See? And so there were various incidents like that.
So, Frank, can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with the issues of trying to maintain minimum flows in the American River?
That was always a problem, because we had to keep sufficient water in the American River, because the agricultural interests wanted water. We wanted to keep water for the fish. So there was a constant, and we did have volunteer experts. We had Felix Smith as an example, and who has received awards for what he's done. So I would try and parcel some of this work off, and in regard to keeping water in the river, that was ongoing. Even today, because
Sarah got involved in lawsuits regarding that, right?
oh, we got a law. You know, there's the old saying that water is for drinking, and then you have to have lawsuits to get that water, for some of it for the fish. You see.
So you had to raise money for that?
Pardon?
You had to help raise money for that?
We had to raise money for legal. Yeah, we had the legal fund. Now people would volunteer to donate money. We had even there was a young attorney from Davis who donated her legal expertise, and that was to save the Fair Oaks Bluffs. So the Fair Oaks Bluffs are part of the American River Parkway.
And there was a proposal. Why was Sarah involved and you involved in the Fair Oaks Bluffs?
Well, because the Fair Oaks Bluffs, even today, is frequented by bicyclists, hikers, and it's a very popular spot. And it's beautiful. You could be up there at sunrise or sunset. And so we had to fight with some of this. There was a fellow who he went back and he says, we own to the middle of the river of the Fair Oaks Bluff. And that was a long...
So had they planned to do something at the bluffs that would have been contrary to public use?
Well, yes, they wanted to build on the bluffs
What they want to
and
build?
exclude the public.
What they want to build?
Houses.
Houses, okay. So, is there anything else you want to add regarding your involvement with Sarah before we switch to something else?
Repeat that question.
Was there anything with regarding your service to Sarah that I've left out?
Oh, no, I think you got it pretty well covered.
Okay, let's talk about the Lake Natoma Community Task Force. Why did you form the Lake Natoma Community Task Force, and what did you accomplish?
All right. The Lake Natoma Community Task Force. And that's where I first met a lot of people. There were people, not only public, but also some of the professionals who wanted to, for instance, they wanted to have parades, water parades on the river, on Lake Natoma.
A bar and a dinner boat, correct?
Yes, yes.
And then a campground?
A what? A campground?
The campground, was that part of the proposal?
Well, yes, that was. But also, there were, for instance, there were companies that wanted to extract aggregates from Lake Natoma and the surrounding area, and we had a lengthy lawsuit on that.
And what was your role?
As founder of the Lake Natoma Community Task Force, I was primarily involved in suing people, because, for instance, the Mississippi Bar, Tykert wanted to take the aggregates, you see. So, but that took a lot of time.
Tell me about the Southside Striders and what your role was in that.
Well, the Southside Striders, that was at Southside Park, and I used to go there during the noon hour because I was involved in running. And Southside Striders, there's a clubhouse there, and so in the clubhouse in the winter was not heated. The water was not heated. So I got together and says, why don't we pay so much money and get it heated? And then that went into the Southside Striders. It began, I said, well, why don't we keep raising money to buy swimming pool tickets for the needy kids in the area. So that was the beginning of the Southside Striders. And I hired a bus twice to go down to the Beta Breakers run. And so that was, and I even had my son Curtis, he designed the t-shirts, tank tops for the Southside Striders. It's kind of corny, it was a lightning bolt and so forth, you know. So that's the Southside Striders.
Let's start a little more general. The Southside Striders was opening that park at noontime for downtown people to run. And when you're
Yes.
talking about water, you were talking about the showers, getting the showers with hot water?
Yes, and also convincing the Parks Department to pave the running track, see. Yeah.
Correct. And also to have a non-paved track as well,
Yeah.
right? So you basically formed that organization.
Yeah, I was a founder, they called me, and we didn't have, if there was any problems, I would just take care of it with a group with some other help.
Capital Nordic Skiers, what was your role with them?
Yes, now I was very much involved in Nordic skiing, and the Capital Nordic Skiers was very informal, and we really didn't have a structured system, but we would all go up there together, and we'd have, let me see, the Auburn Ski Club. We joined forces with them just to raise money, you see. But
You also were a ski racer yourself.
yes, I was, at one time I was the oldest Nordic ski racer in Northern California.
And you won some age group races.
Pardon?
You won some races for your age group?
Oh yes, yes. I was in the age group of 60 to 69, and many times I was the oldest one. I was the only one of that age in the Nordic skiers.
I'm going to come back to something that I put on my questions here that I missed. Can I ask you to go back with Sarah? What do you think was the major accomplishment of that organization while you were involved? And don't be bashful on this, because the whole American River Parkway, etc., may not be what it is today without Sarah's and your efforts.
Well, I think the constant effort, we had a constant effort as I was president and along with the board of directors to keep private interest from wanting to use the parkway for purposes that were contrary to the best interest of the public and the parkway.
Do you think that the parkway would be what it is today without you and Sarah, or would there be a lot less land that was public land?
I would say without the efforts of Sarah and my contributing to it, there would be less land, there would be less water in the river, and I would say that as a blanket statement.
Okay, let's talk about the River Park Homeowners Association and your role with them.
The River Park Homeowners Association. Yes, I was on the board of directors here. I'm not on the board of directors now, but I was on the River Park neighborhood board of directors.
So what were some of the things that, public interest things that group did?
Well, what they we
Go ahead.
we dealt with our city councilman, whoever it might be, and I might say that we had a wonderful city councilman, Steve Cohn, who's no longer there. We also dealt with our with the member of our board of supervisors, because the county has certain jurisdictions, and Phil Cerna was very much involved in that.
Now, didn't you also conduct some nonpartisan candidate forums and things like that, so people would know more about the candidates?
Yes, we did do that, and we held that at the local church here. And now, right now, I'm not on the board of directors. I want to clarify that. But I was on the board of directors for maybe a period of 5 years.
Okay, the next really big one is Epi's Great Race.
Yes,
You started, Epi's Great Race started 42 years ago,
yes.
and you started competing and or being on the committee when?
I started first as a kayaker, and then
And how
The
many, what race would that have been, the first race or?
no, that was about the second or third.
Okay.
Second or third. And then next year my kayaker didn't show up, so I said, well, I'll be a kayaker and a runner.
So you started as a runner?
I started as a runner,
Okay.
and then the second year I was a kayaker and a runner because my kayaker didn't show up. And then from that point on I said, well, I'll do all three. And which I did, and I got to the point where Epi was a personal friend, and I participated. I don't know in how many of Epi great races as an iron person.
You
How
also,
old was he when he started his
how old were you when the race started? How old were you when the race started?
When the Epi's Great Race started, gee, I don't know.
Well,
I was
We started.
I was probably in my 50s or 60s, somewhere in
yeah,
there.
it would have to be. Okay, so not only were you a participant for many, many years, but you also played a key role in establishing the modern course and in developing the processes and procedures that govern the race.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, put it in your own words, not mine.
Well, Epi's Great Race was really something that everybody looked forward to in this area, and my participation was that I started, as I mentioned, with just as a runner, then a kayaker, and then a biker, and so forth. And then for a while I laid out the course and had various clubs say, oh, and it was you had to get a lot of volunteers. There were 300 volunteers, and so it was just it was more of a coordination thing at that
So
time.
you put together teams at various parts on the race course.
Yes.
Who did the run bike transition? Who did you recruit for that?
Who did what?
This run bike transition, that was the Sacramento Wheelman you recruited
Yeah,
for that.
Sacramento Wheelman, and then we had Bill Fimpton. We had other individuals who would say, well, we'll take care of this. Oh,
And then you, and at the bike to boat transition, you had the people that caught the bike. What group did you recruit for that?
on the run the bike transition.
No, bike to boat, the bike dismount. That was the Sacramento bike hikers, right?
Yeah,
And you set that up, correct?
yeah. Yeah, and we had we also had it's hard to describe. We had, as I said, we had 300 volunteers, and some would come back, and some had relatives. You know, I can't remember the name. And Effie was personally involved in that. That was his baby. And he did a lot of fundraising.
Now, there was a manual was put together on how to operate the race, and you were a key person in putting that together, correct?
Initially, and then Effie got some professional help also, paid him, and but I think with Effie's Great Race, there were other people involved. I have to make that quite clear. And Epi, who had a series of restaurants, every year he would come and give so much money to the Board of Supervisors. And he was a showman. And he would, sometimes he would put it in shopping bags, you know, the $1 bills, you see. And he'd take it and he'd dump it on the Board of Supervisors, because the money that he raised was for the Parkway and for the Effie's Great Race Foundation, I'll say. And
the Therapeutic Recreation Services.
Yeah. And so
wouldn't you say it's fair to say that Epi did the public presentations, he raised money to other things, but as far as developing the course, developing the procedures to make the race operate, that was primarily your responsibility?
I was involved in that, and I was particularly involved in laying out the course, because
Let's clarify, there was an original course, and 5 or 6 years in, you developed the course all on the American River Parkway.
yes, because part of it was outside the Parkway, on the city streets, see. And then we decided to have it all in the Parkway, you know, which we have now. And there was even, and there were people that were saying, well, let's make it an even 5K. Well, at times it was very difficult to do that. And you had years where you had washouts, complete washouts.
So Frank, you did a number of things over the years, but you were assistant director of the race for many years, and then later you became director of the race. Is that...
Yeah, I think Rich Angers was the director, and then for whatever reason, then I became director. But Rich Angers was a director at that time.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? What was your role, and what were the major accomplishments of Epi's Great Race while you were involved?
Well, when we had my major accomplishment, if I heard you correctly.
Or the accomplishments of the organization that you played a role in.
All right.
So I'm just Epi's Great Race, during the years you were involved, raised close to $1 million
Yeah.
for the therapeutic recreation services.
Right.
And you played a real important role in making that happen.
Well, yes, it was an important role, and it's kind of hard to describe, but I was, I want to say, and to make it clear, that Epi Johnson practically financed that for a while. There was a little money that came in from the entry fees, but not much. So I have to say that in Epi's race, it was almost, not quite, but he was there, you know, starting a race, and he would get people who were I want to be very careful about that.
Well, I'm trying to separate the fundraising part from the role you played in recruiting volunteers and organizing the event, because that was primarily your
Yeah.
responsibility.
I did lay out the courses we have now. I did lay that out. And we had times when the course went through a tunnel, you know, and I changed that. And there were times that we made it very, very close to a 5K race, and
10K, right?
and there were times when we would go through a tunnel, and Epi wanted at Zinfandel, and that was good for. And we started in the parking lot, and the first turn you had so many people going down with their bicycles. So I did change that, you see.
Anything you'd like to add about Epi's?
Pardon?
Anything you'd like to add regarding Epi's Great Race and your involvement that I've missed?
Well,
Inclusivity of all types of participants. Ensuring that there were people who had some disabilities, that they were still able to.
I still have an Epi's Great Race shirt on.
Yeah.
And what I would do is I would always get the T-shirts and cut them down to tank tops, because when you're running, it's too hot.
Yep.
So, of course, right now, Epi's Great Race isn't what it used to be. And I'm not involved in it. I can't run. I'm too old to run. Not old, but
Well, how old are you?
I'm 92.
You're 93.
93.
93 now. Okay,
Snuck
I
up
stopped
on you,
counting.
Frank, you had some involvement with some river cleanups related to this California State University, Sacramento.
Yes. What happened was they were the frat boys. They were putting rocks with their frats.
Initials.
Yeah, right here. And then and then some of the other buddies, and then there was an individual who'd get up and didn't like the frat boys, and he would throw the rocks in the river. So I went down to, I and Tim Washburn, I think, we went down and we complained about it. And finally, what they did was they decided that they would have the Greek letters with one, and that resolved that. It was just a case of disputes between these, but we had to, at that time, I don't recall. Sarah was involved to a certain extent in that. But I don't know if I've answered that.
That's okay. So we're gonna go into some personal issues here, and just some of this we didn't get on tape, so we're gonna do it again. What was the date you were born?
The date that I was born, November 8th, 1922,
And you were born in,
Buffalo, New York.
and you went to high school. Oh, where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in a portion of the time in Buffalo, New York, and then the rest of the time in San Diego.
And you went to high school,
I went to high school in San Diego.
and you graduated from high school early so that you could join the maritime services.
That's correct.
All right, now we're gonna. You've kind of answered some of this, but let's do it anyway. How did you spend your leisure time?
How did I spend my leisure time? Well, I had my family to take care of, my work to take care of, and my training for various races.
Okay, what kind of training? What were you doing?
I was running along the parkway.
Mm-hmm.
I was bicycling. A lot of that was on weekends, and kayaking.
Okay. And who are your heroes or role models?
Who was my role?
Who are your heroes or role models?
That's a hard one.
If you think of it, we'll come back. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So, while growing up, what or who influenced you the most?
Pardon?
While you were growing up,
Yes.
who or what influenced you the most?
Repeat that once more.
While you were growing up,
Yes.
who or what influenced you the most?
I'd say the Depression influenced me a lot as to what I could do and what I wanted to do. And it was during the Depression, and I really didn't have much time to just choose, well, I'm going to do this or this. I had to work, see. And along with this, I lost my mother when she died when I was 5 years old. And it was back in the Depression days. And my father had to go to work all the time. So there wasn't any role model that I could say.
They were in an orphanage for part of that.
You were in an orphanage?
Yeah. It was the, get that picture.
Yeah, okay, you talk about it.
And you see, after my mother died, my father, who was an immigrant and had to work, he paid. Here's okay. This is a picture, and that's me over here. And they call it. The family called it the reluctant Catholic. See, and
So this was what,
so
a boarding
my
school or an orphanage or what?
orphanage. You see, this is the German Catholic orphanage home in Buffalo, New York. Now, there weren't very many Germans there because they had become more affluent. There were mostly Italians and Irish and Poles. And my father paid $5 a month for each of us. Each of us.
Yeah, how many family members did you have?
Pardon?
You and who else?
It was my oldest sister, Teresa, and then my younger brother, Anthony, and then myself. And my older brother, John, who was the oldest male sibling I had. He was left with the grandfather because the grandfather said, well, you're taking my daughter and you say you're going to come back, but I don't know. So my brother stayed over there and we went with my father. And I didn't see my brother again until he was in his late teens. And that's when my father remarried, you see.
When he went back to Italy to find another wife, and then came back with my dad's brother who he had never met.
Yeah.
And they were all in the orphanage until the honeymoon was over, and then they were all reunited.
Is that when you moved to San Diego, or was that later?
Well, I spent a little time in Buffalo, and then I moved to San Diego. And moving from Buffalo, New York to San Diego was like being in heaven, you know, because it's nice and balmy. And I spent, as I said before, I spent my high school years in San Diego.
So I'm going to switch gears on you here. What was the highest honor or award you ever received?
Well, I'd say being, I'm looking up there because I've got my 10 years of service to Save the American River Association and being made emeritus for that.
Right. Of all the awards you've received, which was the most meaningful to you and why?
Well, I would say being made emeritus for the Save the American River Association, because that was something that I was personally involved in more so.
Of the awards you've received, what was your most cherished family tradition and why?
Repeat
Your
that.
most cherished family tradition and why?
Let me think that over now. You're asking, Charlie, what?
What is your most cherished family tradition?
Well, as far as family tradition, I'm very pleased. I've got my daughter and my son and my grandchildren, and you can call that a tradition if you want to, but that's the closest to it.
What have you liked best about your life so far?
What did I like best?
Mm-hmm.
Successfully raised a family.
What was your happiest or proudest moment?
Happiest?
Or proudest moment?
Well, a proud moment was when my daughter graduated from San Francisco State and then got her degree in kinesiology here, and my son getting his law degree.
Okay. And what do you feel have been the most important successes in your life?
I would say raising a family successfully.
Frustrations?
Frustration. Never having enough time to do things.
That's a good frustration to have, isn't it? What do you think the turning points in your life have been?
The turning points, I would say one turning point was going to sea in the maritime service and having been in World War II and came out of it without losing a leg or an arm, and I would answer it in that manner.
What have been the most influential experiences in your life?
The what?
Most influential experiences.
Influential experiences. Okay. I really don't know.
Kind of similar to the last question. So, describe a person or situation from your childhood that had a profound effect on the way you look at life.
Well, the way I look at life is this way. You do the best you can. You try and get along with everybody, and you realize that everybody doesn't think like you do, and you just live it day by day.
Frank, as I read the letters for your nomination, one of the things that came across to me a lot was how when you approached all these, let's call them battles, over protecting the parkway or something else, that you never made an enemy and you always made friends. You had to have had a great deal of thought into how you approached that.
Well, I remember one of the supervisors, I forget his name, he was an African American, and he says, Frank, he says, we may disagree, but we always get along afterwards. So life is a compromise, really. You don't have your way all the time.
Absolutely. Is there anything you would have done differently in your life? Yeah.
I really don't know. I'm a fatalist. You just have to take life as it comes.
That's a good one. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you were young?
Money isn't everything.
Okay. If a young person came to you asking what's the most important element for living a good life, what would you say?
Well, first of all, don't think you're going to win every battle or resolve every situation. You're not going to do it. Secondly, treat people well. And thirdly, I don't know.
Those are good points. How would you define a good life or a successful life?
Having a family, having the respect of your neighbors, and do things for other people.
What would you like people to remember about you?
Well, I don't know. Maybe remember me as a good person, see?
That's a good answer. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you've covered everything.
Thank you very much, Frank.
You're very welcome.